When I started this podcast, I was like, you know what? I don't want to just ask people about their stories. And as I've gone along, I'm like, it's kind of important because I think I used to do some podcasts back in the day, and sometimes I would get tired telling my story. Like it'd be like, like I need to tell my story. So I want to preface you with that, and kind of, and as I was doing some research for the show, I kind of saw that you had an interesting, unique background as far as what brought you to your healing journey around what I saw around gun violence. And so, anything you want to shine a light on, like what brought you to the place of now offering kind of your healing and gifts to the world? Like, what was that kind of catalyst as we all have something that kind of takes us
Yeah,
down our path?
we do. And I love that you ask stories because I think in this line of work, right, whether it's meditation or mindfulness, typically it comes with the reason why you're there, why you find it, why you become passionate about it. It becomes your purpose. And there's so much healing for yourself and that you get to offer others, right? So my journey started really when I was 22 and I was crazy in love with my college boyfriend. And he was also 22 and he was shot and killed in a random act of gun violence. We were living in Santa Barbara. And at that time, and when I look back on it, and I still feel it like in my heart as I talk about it, it's so filled with emotions. But I did not have any tools to grieve, to understand even what trauma was, to process, to talk about it, to really not only just heal, but to be present with what I was feeling. And it wasn't that I started doing that work then. It's just was this catalyst that later, about 10 years later, became a real reason why I needed to and wanted to heal. So fast forward 10 years, I was in my early 30s. I had two young, amazing daughters, and I decided that I needed to and wanted to have a divorce. So I was going through a divorce, having some space and some time to realize that I was on this I don't, it's not even a path, but this non-path of feeling like every day, the next day I was going to feel better. Like tomorrow I'll feel myself. Tomorrow I'll feel more joy. It's just kind of this process of burnout and again, a lack of tools. So I decided one day that in order to be the best version of myself, from my kids, from my friends, from my family, that I really needed to dive in. Right? Like I needed some help. So I started reading books. I did Louise Hay's 21 Days of Self-Love. And I was like, oh, wait, this is working. These things are working. Here we go. So it just took me on this wild journey, which I'm still doing today, right? We're always learning, we're always growing. Of I went to Reiki and I became a Reiki master. I loved the energy work. I did a spiritual and business coaching developing class. And one of the last ones I did before I started becoming kind of more of an entrepreneur in this realm was a meditation, 6-week meditation certification course with David G, a fellow Insight Timer friend of ours.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've been to a workshop with David G. That's great.
So good. Yeah, so that was a long-winded answer to your to your question.
Yeah, no, it speaks to such a strong why what I'm hearing, and that's actually something I don't think I've spoken with on this podcast. So I'd love to kind of double click on that around the why behind what we do, why we do this work, and it sounds like what I heard from you is really to be a really good mother, right? To show up for like for your kids, for who you want to be in the world. Would you say that that's your why, or would you talk about that in a different way?
I think the why has to start with yourself. wholeheartedly. And so I think my why was to to not hurt. That was my why, to not hurt so much. And I knew there was ways to take that hurt and turn it into a purpose. I didn't necessarily know at the time that's where it would go, but eventually it was like, oh, wait, my why now is because I don't want other people to have to hurt unnecessarily.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah. I was just reading a poetry book and I just flipped to a page and it was, I forget who it was, but it was to thank, like take your pain and thank it because it's like brought you closer to God in some ways, like that. As Ram Dass would say, suffering is grace. So like that pain, often brings us to the place where, like your story, like needing to seek help, and now wanting to ease other people's pain, which I believe our purpose, and I want to maybe ask you about that since you used the word, um, our purpose in some way is to ease the suffering of the planet, and that could show up, I think, in many different ways. Like there's many different ways to ease suffering. That doesn't always have to be like I am helping people heal directly, but I
Right.
think like a musician, helps ease the suffering, right? By finding
Yeah.
our favorite music. So I'm
Nature.
curious. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm curious your thoughts around like, people maybe struggling that are like wanting to ask themselves like what is my purpose? How do you think of that word specifically, or that kind of idea of purpose?
That's a great question. Because like you said, it's unique for everyone, right? And not one person can say, "Oh, go become a meditation teacher. You'll find your purpose. Go here and find your purpose." I think it's, I guess one way I can say it, I guess if I was to turn the question into how could I help someone discover their purpose, or in that sense, it's like finding the finding the little things or the big things that bring you joy and going after it, whatever that is. Like that's where that intuition, or I love talking about signs, right? Like on a whole level, like following those nuggets that come your way when you're open to them, and allowing that to be the energetic pull towards discovering this bigger purpose for you. What do you think? How would you answer that question?
Yeah, I always talk about purpose, and I think I love what everything that you said, right? That's like kind of those sparks of where that lead us to kind of a state where we feel like we are on purpose. And so I take the perspective that purpose is not something that we do, but it's something that we are. And in some ways, like our own uncovering and unfolding and growth journey is our purpose. And in that, it kind of leads us to maybe doing many different things, but we kind of can always shift into an energy of being on purpose, of being purposeful, right? Then that kind of leads us into all the different things, like just like you and me, we do different things, whether it's meditation, whether it's coaching, whether it's teaching classes, whether it's creating, whether it's writing books. So it's all like, it all can be, you might not say that you're just a writer or you're just a teacher or you're just that. It kind of, there's a lot of different tendrils out there that in what we do.
Yeah. And I think you just brought up a really good point, especially like right now in this time of the year, we're all kind of feeling like we have to do or be a lot of things. But sometimes that purpose, or that feeling, that unfolding comes in like the quiet times, right? Comes just not having to be like having those healthy boundaries that sometimes just include you, right?
Yes.
Like I love the word unfolding because it's almost less. It's
Yes.
like sometimes less is best, as they say.
Yes, and if we could start there, like that, the the sense of actually we don't have to do anything. Like who we are is inherently whole and complete and enough. And if we can actually access that state and that embodied realization of that, of like, oh wow, that I am this beautiful being, and there's nothing that I could that really need, like from that space, then the inspiration, the natural kind of action unfolds right from there, which is such a beautiful, yeah, which is so such a beautiful way to like think about it.
And that's what I love so much about meditation, is what I didn't understand before taking the course and becoming someone that loves to meditate, was that within meditation, there are thousands of directions you can take it. Before I was this thought of, you're just sitting still, you're trying to be quiet. Like, it actually kind of annoyed me, to be honest, which is why I wanted to learn more. Cause I was like, I see all these people and they're all peaceful, and they're they're sitting quietly in the morning and they're talking about their morning meditation. And it was really irritating to me, because I felt like, okay, how can sitting still make you feel like you're more productive in the day? Like, wouldn't you just be annoyed? Right? Again, thinking I need to do more. But then with meditation, as you know, it's like you can just calm your breathing, with like calm your nervous system through it. If you're feeling stressed, you can go on a visualization in nature, have an adventure. Like there's a world of options within meditation. You do it when you move, when you're outside, when you're in the car, right? Like for a minute before you get out of bed. And it's like dropping, like someone said to me once, like, meditation is like dropping like gold coins in a bucket, in a sense, where you're like adding to not only yourself, but to like the world around you in this crazy, cool, beautiful way.
It does feel like like it becomes for me, it feels like a charging, like I kind of get a little recharge, and I can't overcharge, it seems like, but like it continues adding to this kind of battery life that over a long-term period, I think in my energy field feels like it's growing, like even if it doesn't always feel flow, like even if the meditation, I'm talking more specifically maybe more sitting traditional, but you're so right, it can look like so many different things. And for people listening here, and you've heard me beat a dead horse with talking about meditation as an art, right? Learning how to like create and weave your own art via your meditation. So I'd be curious to hear like how you um, think of specifically creating your meditations, and like how just maybe your process or how you see that, if you see it as an art, if you see it as like, no, I want to follow these specific things, if yeah, I'd be curious to hear how you look at that.
I that probably two ways that I approach, three actually, approach what I want to create and when I create it. One, I look for the need for myself, but also with people that I coach, like what is coming up for them. It always seems to be there's a pattern, right? It could be the time of the year, the season that we're in, the planetary alignments, whatever it is, but there always seems to be some kind of something that's coming up that week or that month for people. So I listen to it, but I one of my deepest self-love, self-care tools is that I love to run down mountains. It's how I release my stress. So I carve out time as often as possible to get out on a hike. And when I'm running down, it's like, it's almost when my creativity explodes, and I'll just listen to, again, what is coming up. Like I created a course on grief for Insight Timer using the acronym of grief. And that came up all while running my ass down a mountain and sweating. It's like, oh yeah, there we go, there we go, there we go. That's kind of how I click into the creativity. And then the third step is that I don't question it. So it's, if I'm feeling like this is what I want to create, this is what needs to be created, I go for it. And I think that that is so valuable in my own art expression, because hey, it might not be the exact thing at the right time, might not flow perfectly, but you learn every time. And you also, I think, keep that energy flowing. So it's like a kind of a self-belief, it's not filtering. I remember hearing once, like, we're thinking about how many works of art, whether that is music or painting, books, have not been created because of our own self-limiting beliefs, right? Oh, is that going to be good enough? Is that people going to like that? Is everyone going to hate it? Am I going to be made fun? All those things that come up. And so my way of working through those is to just try and have the mindset of like, no, there's a reason for this. Even if it helps one other person, there's a reason for it, and that's enough.
Was that always the case for you? Like, of like, okay, I'm just gonna trust my creation and ship it, or did you have to figure that out along the way of facing a lot of resistance or imposter syndrome? Because I think I know people listening, like that's amazing to connect with that. Like, just like, hey, this is my idea, and I'm gonna let it ship. I'm gonna be unattached to like why, or thinking it's the best, or needing to be perfect. Like, was that trained from experience, or you tendency to already like be in that state of releasing it to the world?
It was definitely trained. I was an actor in my 20s, and with that craft comes so much rejection, right? And you can personalize it all day, or you can say, okay, I'm the wrong, I'm the wrong height. I didn't look right. I didn't nail that audition, whatever it is. So I was definitely trained to let go of um, the pain of rejection or holding on to rejection, in a sense. But I also, when I was young, was really made fun of for having a really soft voice, which caused me to hold a lot of my words back, right? So part of becoming a meditation teacher was working through that fear. And I knew that in order to get through that fear, I just had to put it out there, right? And over time, you kind of learn to trust the process and be okay with rejection, be okay with feedback. Take the feedback people give you and say, that didn't resonate. Okay, cool. I'll do it better next time. Doesn't have to be perfect out the gate, right? That's just like stopping the momentum. Just get it out there and see what happens.
It sounds like you had your own rejection therapy, I call it. In like, can you actually let yourself be rejected over, and like actually seek rejection in some ways, to so you can kind of ease the burn of it, where it's just like not as, it doesn't feel as big of a thing because you're used to it. Like, you find, kind of develop a comfort around that. So what an amazing training to constantly have to feel that actor. And also, what a gift. Like, I mean, I know you had to work through at least the expression of your voice, but the making fun of having a soft voice. One thing that you can't teach in, when someone's learning how to do meditation, is like, our voice is our voice. So like, we have, naturally, there's gonna be like, I'm super grateful that my voice is conducive to slowing down and guiding someone through something. And so that it's interesting that your thing that you were made fun of also became something that you share as a gift.
Yeah, it definitely switched. And I was like, oh, yes, right. How do you find your creativity? How do you tap into that for your writing and
Well,
meditation?
you're inspiring me, because I've been doing a lot of running. I ran a marathon recently, so like road running has been like a big thing for me recently. But I always love, if I'm hiking, when I get to jet down a trail, because like, to me, it's such a presencing thing, because you're skipping the rocks, you're really looking at your feet. So the fact that you told me about like downhill running, I think I do have some trail running shoes coming, and because I want to start getting out on trail. So one, you're inspiring me. Maybe that'll give me some. This is like my message from the universe of like, this is where your next big idea is going to come from. Um, yeah, it's such a great question, and sometimes it's in meditation. The idea for, I had a podcast I started last February, and Originally, it was called Awakening to Purpose, and it was very broad, and I didn't really know like what I was doing with it. It was kind of like, well, people have a podcast, I have this content, I'm just going to start moving talks I'm doing on Inside Timer, I'll also use them on podcasts. And then I started interviewing people, but I didn't really know who we were talking to. Like, it was such a broad topic that I didn't know my audience, and it was hard to get me like energy to actually invite people. And so in May, I did a challenge to myself to do an hour meditation each day, like for the month of May. And through just like that prolonged sitting, at least, in that month, I got the idea for, oh, like either I'm not doing this podcast because it's not fun for me, I have no energy in it. And then it like was like, no, this is what it is, because I had been co-teaching in a meditation teacher certification with, I don't know if you know David Gandelman, he's kind of bigger on Insight Timer too.
Okay.
But and so I was spending time with a lot of people that were wanting to be teachers, and it was just so energizing. And then I just kind of in my meditation just saw this shift of like, I could see it. It was all so clear, and I kind of made that pivot in May. And so it's been a lot more fun. It's easier to reach out to people too, because I'm like, I know who we're talking to. This is what it is. So that's kind of recency. It isn't always in meditation though. I think I kind of find if I can just start, if I have a thread of an idea, and typically maybe it'll start from my newsletter, or maybe it's a meditation, like just like something that maybe like I'm seeing in the world, or something that happened to me. I tend to go towards my own experience, where like I can kind of see the lesson, or something that feels like there's something here I just want to start exploring, and I'll get on a blank piece of paper. And for me, creativity happens as I'm like making connections, as I'm writing, like in that moment, like there's like, oh, like this whole new thing. It's like I open the channel for like, oh, this connection's made. And I could have never prepared for that thing to happen unless I just started like writing on the thing. So um yeah, that's kind of how there's a couple answers towards it. And one more thing is, in learning human design a little bit, I don't know if you're familiar with human design,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so learning that for me has actually given me permission to like not always need to be creative, to like actually let the cycles, let like not forcing it. Like I always feel like I need to force it, but actually letting those cycles happen um in a natural process. So it's giving me a lot of permission, because I always feel like I need to be kind of like every day, grinding after it, very kind of that
I
energy.
I experienced that same thing and learned that lesson, and it strongly, because I mean, there's nothing worse than sitting down being like, this is my time to be creative, and nothing is happening. Might as well go outside, do something fun, right? It's kind of that purpose thing, or that run down the mountain, or go to yoga, do what makes you happy, and boom, there's that light. There it is. So the hours spent trying to be creative are now filled with something that lights you up, and you can sit down and pound something out real quick in a great way that's creative. And I wanted to bring your something back full circle, because I think it was super aligned. But how you started your podcast broad, right? Not necessarily knowing the niche, but you started it, right? You planted that seed, which when I was talking about the kind of not the fear of rejection, but putting something out there because you don't know where it's going to take you. So don't wait for something to be perfect,
Mm.
right? Because it will lead to something else. If you hadn't started that podcast broad, you might not have been seeking it more meditation to get it to more of a niche that's aligned with you now. Right?
So true. Thanks for that reflection. That's a really important note, and something that I'm honestly like, yeah, like, oh yeah, you're right. Like it has to, things can evolve. So many, if you just look at startups, like so many startups, they like pivot so much that they're an entirely different company from when they started, because they like, this is what it wants to be. Like you have to kind of start it and then learn. And so we're talking, I mean, we're talking about ways to get out of people, ways to get out of our own way to just do it. And so, someone that's listening that's really in their kind of maybe self-sabotaging critic voice, really maybe feeling a lot of hesitation or paralyzation, besides maybe going to a yoga class or going running, like doing these things to get us out of our way, is there any other like processes or practices that you find helpful, or mantras, or just kind of inspiration for someone who feels stuck in their maybe creativity? Let's focus it in that way.
Yeah, I think this is okay to tap into because it's a trauma healing process, but it doesn't have to be based in trauma, right? Like it's those self-limiting beliefs. It's that self-talk that makes us stuck in our fear, unwilling to move through it. So I think a great practice, I do it all the time too, when these things surface, is to slow down, take your deep breaths and witness what your self-talk without, without judgment. Get out a piece of paper, write it down. What is coming up for you? I'm not enough. No one's going to like my voice, right? I'm not educated enough. Like all of the things that we all have at different times, whatever that is for you, but really, witnessing it, writing it down, and then taking the time to reframe it. So it's just, I am enough. I'm putting myself out there. I'm proud of myself. My words do matter. I have a lot to say, right? It sounds simple, but we, neuroplasticity, like you can rewire your brain, you can rewire your thoughts. So keep that piece of paper next to you with the self-talk that's going to help you. When it comes up, keep saying it over and over again. I am enough. I am great. I'm going to do good. Like, and eventually it starts to unfold and work, right? You have to tell yourself the opposite story and then, yeah, put it out there and celebrate it. Like celebrate
Yes.
that you made that step. I remember the first track I put on Insight Timer, I could barely sleep because it was like, oh, congratulations, it's released. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, am I excited? Do I want to hide? Like, this is so scary. Um, and it is neat to look back and reflect on, okay, now I still get excited every time I create something, whether it's Insight Timer or something else, but there's more confidence in it, only because I am afraid, people still say, no, not enough space for me. They give feedback. I like that. Like you said, we never know how it's going to grow and explore. So my advice would be check those self-limiting beliefs because the world does want to hear your voice.
Reminds me of a question that I sometimes like to ask people. I think it's from Byron Katie, and like her like four questions that she asked, but of like what if the opposite were true, right? Of and like starting to like argue for finding the opposite of I'm enough. Well, what if the opposite were true? Like what if you were enough? Like what would that look like? What would be true? Like what would you how would that show up? So kind of like shifting that reminded me of kind of that ninja move to shift it in the
I
opposite.
love that. Asking yourself that, what if I am enough? Right? Yeah. Well, that's great. I love that because you can kind of that you feel that energy shift within you, even asking yourself
Yeah.
that question. Right.
And you start looking towards that. You look starts looking towards like what how you life is showing you that in some ways, right?
Yeah.
So you start to do some of these practice, you're on your healing journey, or in your early 30s, you kind of realize you're going to start to do this for yourself and kind of figure this out for yourself, and then wanting to help others. And so when was like the beginning of, okay, I've been doing this, to here's my stake in the ground, I have a business, what was that was there a moment, was it like slow,
There was
what
a
was that?
there was a real defining moment because I wasn't sure that I wanted to turn what I've learned into a business. I wasn't sure. Um, but I had just finished my coaching certification, and a really close friend of mine called me and was on the verge of ending her life. And I knew I was sitting outside, like under the stars. Like it was one of those moments, where time kind of slows down. And I knew right then that I was ready to help, that I had the tools to support her. And I said to her, I said, listen, I'm going to coach with you as a gift. You know, our exchange is sobriety and 100% dedication to the work that we are going to do together. And it was all in. I wouldn't have said that in that place in someone's life without knowing that I could do it. And that was it. It was like the next day we started coaching, and it was kind of just this like this it was just it was so powerful. It was so it felt like that word on purpose again, but it felt so on purpose. And then in meditation, it was a pandemic. It was being at home, wanting a community, wanting to needing community for myself, you know, and for whatever, not even necessarily to help people. It was just that was the time to tap into my voice and meditation teaching, which is when I started on Insight Timer.
So was there is there doubts? Like, have you faced, has it been like effortless? Like, okay, now I have, what a beautiful story to like do that for your friend and really like, okay, I'm doing this. Like, when you did that, did you have like a full client roster like next week? Like, what, how did that take
No,
us
I
to, because I
wish.
think people,
No,
I
that
think people need to hear, right? Wherever you're at, like, whatever that journey is like, you know, that it can take time, or it can take a process, and there's a lot of like maybe frustration or doubts or fears, or yeah, I know, I won't speak for you, but I know I've experienced a lot of that. So yeah, like
oh yeah,
the yeah, what is that like for you?
the ebbs and the flows and the ups and the downs. I have a rule that I tried to follow in growing business, and that is just one thing a day
Mm.
towards it. If that is that your mouth is open and talking about what you're doing, if that is writing something new, if it's working on your website, it's we all have a lot of parts of our lives, right? I'm a single mom, and my energy is divided, but when it comes to my work and growing business, it is one thing a day that before I go to bed I feel like, yes, I did that. And eventually, as you know, those things grow, right? It's like putting a drop of water in, you know, in a cup. It's like eventually it starts to fill up. And I think there's no way if all of a sudden I would have had a full roster of clients that I would have necessarily even been able to manage that. So it's
So
kind of affecting the flow.
what,
Right.
which one of the things, and you may not have an answer for it, but like of all the things that you do, like where do you feel like your heart's at most? Like, if you could just, if you had to just do the one thing, and you had were paid handsomely for it, and you can just do the thing, like, is there one, or would it continue to be like this multiple? And maybe this is a bad question, but
No,
um
it's a great question because it's hard. It's kind of hard to answer. I love to write. As you do you, if I'm right. I love to write. But I think if I was writing full time, it would not like I have to have the balance between writing, the quiet time of recording, and the one-on-one with people. So yeah, it couldn't be one or the other for sure.
Yeah,
That's
it is
how
it
about
is a
you?
nice balance. Yeah, it is, I think, a balance. I think there is like this dream of me where actually I just want to have book contracts and just be able to sit and write books and like do my own thing and have, not anything on the schedule besides that, and whatever, things need to be tied up. But I do appreciate the balance, and I try to structure my weeks. It never works out that well, but I try to like stack coaching on the same day, or as much as I can on the same day, because it's also like an energy that I'm in, and it's nice to have that breakup in the week. But would I want to be coaching 5 sessions a day, 5 days a week? Absolutely not. That would be way too much. And some people, they do, they want to, that's like their tried and true in that way. But I do like having a lot of things in the fire, so to speak, because I can get bored quickly too with things, and I need to like jump to this next thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're so similar like that. I try to do coaching like first few days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I like to leave Thursday, Friday for more free creativity and things happen. But yeah, it's that I couldn't do coaching all the time either. You need to write,
So
you need to get
I love your acronym for your coaching of like we ignite life dreams. Wild. I don't know if
yeah,
you picked that on a run or if it was
I
another
picked that on a run. I just
you run just give you like the acronym game strong. That's amazing. That's this is what's calling for me. I can't wait. I'll let you know if I go on that trail run, like if there's some insights that come.
and you hit it right. I could even feel it when you're like, oh, it's like a game that happens as you run down a mountain, right? It slows down, you're bouncing off the rocks, like the air is fresh, you can hear the nature, all the things, but it is like this crazy, wild meditation moment.
Yeah.
It's neat. It's like the alchemy of all of it.
So which of your dreams that you've brought to fruition, like whether it's coaching, writing, like which have been most challenging or rewarding for you?
Mm. I wrote a poetry book called Unbroken, which I released on the 20th anniversary of my boyfriend's passing, the angelversary, we call them. And I released it on that day, and that felt so vulnerable and so just like a huge leap in surrendering and trusting. And I had written the poetry in that book, and it's a little one, but over the course of like 10 years of grieving, of sitting by the fire, spilling my heart. And with poetry, it's like sometimes you can say so much in a sentence or two or a phrase. So it just felt that was a huge accomplishment to me because I never thought I would open open that vault up to other people.
Yeah, what a beautiful, beautiful creation. And to get a book out, I know is not, however long the book is or however what kind of book it is, it's like a whole project and process. How do you what is are you working on a like do you still kind of well, let me ask this. For people that want to write a book of some sort, like is there any wisdom that you have as far as like writing process or publishing it, sharing it, something maybe you wish you knew before you published it? We tend to like, oh, I could have should have done that or this. Anything come to mind around that? Because I know so many people listening, so many in this journey, like it's have that dream to write their story or to write what's helped them. So what could you tell them that might be helpful, like from your journey?
Yeah. So the second book I wrote was called Rise, and and this is a great tool for people listening that are meditation creators, right? So I wrote 50 mini morning meditations for Rise, and I gave myself a 6-month deadline to create them, but I did it with layers of purpose. One, I wanted to be super healthy and have early mornings because that makes me feel the best. So I was doing the 5 a.m. by Robin Sharma clubs. I was getting up at 5, having a couple of hours of writing time, and writing morning meditations was super peaceful and relaxing. But I wanted to publish a book. I self-publish, which there's more tips on that. But I also knew that I could use the meditations to create content for, say, Insight Timer or for my clients, whatever. So it was kind of, there were multiple layers woven in there of why I published that book, right? And I still use it for content. I have do like a 50-day, free meditation on my website, things like that from that, right? So I would recommend that for anyone because it's like building up your content library on top of getting your voice out there. And I love the self-publishing where like if it's your voice and these are your meditations, it doesn't have to be filtered by, all respect for the editors and the publishers and the agents in the world. So much respect for them. But if you're in that realm of like, I want to trust this and trust this process, like go for it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you can have, start building your own audience, like, and self-publishing, is it gives you so much more freedom. Obviously, you get more of the revenue from it, and it's fun, and it's a beautiful, and there's so many platforms and things that can help you create, give you the structure to do it. But I love what how you broke it down in a way to kind of these kind of a daily practice or a daily kind of writing, and how you're using that for other content. Like, it actually is super supportive, and it's making me think of like, okay, I have 7 courses. Could I create like a whole, like, all with all the lessons? Like, could there be I know there's 100% a book in there, but like,
Yes.
it's making me think of what that looks like. Because I've been thinking of, I wrote my first book, published it in 2017, so it's been a little while, and
Mhm.
a lot of things have happened since that time. And even the theme of this podcast, like, it feels like, for me and this book that's just starting to percolate, of like the come up, in a way. Like, how do you take this? And for me, since I had quit in a corporate job pretty drastically and dramatically, um and there was no going back for me, and there was also, didn't know really what to do, or what that was going to look like, and so I had to figure it out. And it was such a it took a while. Like, it really took from like at least 4 years to like 2 years after I even published the book to really actually start making a living. And so, like, that process to me was so meaningful and challenging that and I love the intersection of um entrepreneurship is actually how I got into meditation. So it's like, I love this kind of intersection, because it was beginning of my journey. And so, I'm sharing this because you're uh, inspiring me to think of what my second book is going to be, which is kind of maybe mapping the journey, how someone else might kind of bring their purpose to life in a way. So
I
I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it has the essence of why I'm doing this podcast too, like to help, specifically, talking to a specific person here, but maybe the book's going to be a little bit more broad. So we'll see.
Ooh, this is exciting. I can
Yeah.
see it. I can see it forming. I can hear it. I love this.
So, with this topic of niching, this podcast is for a niche. I don't, and so even my coaching, I feel like, is not very niched. I mean, there are people who I love working with, but if you go to my coaching page, like, I'm pretty broad, and it's something that I've been thinking about recently, of like, okay, you always hear, find your ideal client, really speak to that person. And I've tended to fortunate, especially because I've, been grateful to grow the audience through Insight Timer. That's cast a wide net, to
Yeah.
use that. And I've gotten to work with so many different people, and so I'm constantly thinking of like, what niche do I want to stake my ground as a niche? I don't think so. There's different things, programs offers that are more niche based, but I'm curious what your thoughts around niching, whether it's for coaching, or if you even think about that, or yeah, because I know it's a topic that many people are like asking themselves about.
Yeah. I mean, niching marketing wise is super smart, right? But on the other end, like for me as a coach, and it sounds like you as well, like we have this opportunity of connecting with people of all at all different places, different walks of life, different ages, different countries, different reasons why they're looking for coaching. And it's hard, I think, to sometimes come up with the words that describe what that is. Like, why would someone reach out if it's not just, grief navigation coaching or trauma healing? And I started by just saying, oh, I'm a trauma healing coach, which is in essence, people are like, okay, I've reached this place in my life. I'm at a standstill. I have some pain in my past that I want to uncover and unroot so I can move through it. Which is kind of universal too, right? In a sense, everyone's like, oh, here I am, I'm stuck. But the niching is tough because I personally want to work with people in that place. And I feel very fortunate that when I work with people, they are ready to move through that, right? That's kind of why you hire a coach. Is like, okay, I'm ready to make some changes here, some big ones, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever that is. And that can come in the relationship transitions, it can come with grief, job transitions, right? I want to write a book. How do I write a book when I'm facing all of these, these thoughts that are holding me back, like whatever that is? And that's where that WILD acronym came from. We ignite life dreams, because I want I want to work with people who are ready to actualize their dreams. It sounds cheesy and cliche, but it is possible. I see it all of the time, right? Whatever you want, you can get there. It just sometimes takes the support of other people to help you work through the weeds, right?
So to me, like that sounds like two different niches in a way. So like are you focusing more on, someone wanting to like live their dreams, bring a project, or someone focusing on like healing the trauma? And they both can go, together, right? When you like heal through things, you're like, well, now I want to live a bigger life. So I just be curious because I'm imagining listener was like, oh, that's like two different niches in one. So how do you speak to that to maybe like if someone were to come to your coaching page and learn about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and that's the golden question, is how do we use our words to describe what it is that we do, right? And I do think that's constantly evolving, even whether it's my website or how I'm talking about it, or seeing how it is evolving. And but like you said, they are two different things, but they do go hand in hand. So I don't know if you or any listeners have advice
We're
on
trying
how
to
I
figure this out too. So,
yeah.
you think you're
Yeah.
listening to this podcast, like if you think we have it figured out, definitely not the case. Yeah, just trying things out. I know I'll speak for myself, just to continuing to try things out, test things. Does this work? Do I like this? Does this feel right? And just kind of making it up in some ways as I go along. And that's kind of the fun of it. So yeah, let us know if you have you have this dialed in. We'd love to hear from you.
Exactly. We would. That's so good.
Is there any, and I know this is a broad question, but any other kind of business or advice you would maybe give to yourself starting out on like sharing or creating, or maybe you would give to someone else who just started, thinking about developing their first workshop, just created their first meditation, business and or other kind of insights to them that come.
Yeah, I think something that I wish I would have done years ago, and that now I finally am doing, and I'm getting so much value out of it, is find a creative partner. Not necessarily that you're working on anything together. It could be a group or it could be one other person, but having a creative session once a week together to just explore ideas and to say it out loud, it goes so far, because you get to hear yourself saying, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Is this, what do you think? And even that, saying it out loud to someone else, where they can say, I like it. I don't know. It's not resonating. It's just that so much of being an entrepreneur lives inside of yourself, right? And it's getting it out, having someone to bounce it off, having that support. Yeah, I would say start that today. Find that
That's
person.
that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think getting around other people doing it is important. And I've been thinking about I run a mastermind group for, I would say, the target audience of this podcast, and it's my first start of it. It was kind of a beta test 3 month, and in my plan for it is for it to continue, and it's going well enough, and I'm having fun enough where I'm like wanting to continue, and it's like a normal thing. But what I'm thinking of doing is creating, in addition to like our weekly meetings, which is, it's a group of 10 or so, and it's really about like getting support around what you're working on and just seeing other people doing it. And so I'm also wanting to add in, similar to what you're saying, where we show up on Zoom for an hour. Everyone talks about what they're creating, what they're working on. We don't really have to go on video, and we just kind of go in the background. It's kind of like a co-working space together. And so I'm
Oh,
thinking about
cool.
adding that in. It's a little different. I think your idea of like actually having something where you're having someone that can give you feedback and ideas. Obviously, a coach can do that too, right? But you don't necessarily need a coach if it's just like this creative. So finding someone like that is a really unique advice and really powerful advice. I think it's like super super cool. So let us know if you do that, because it's always fun to hear when people actually do things that you talk about.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, I just started doing it and it's a game changer. So yeah, younger me would have had that for sure. For sure set in stone. And what do they say? Like even with an accountability, I mean, this is a coach version, but if it's the creativity for fun and it's not even coaching, but that having an accountability partner, you're like 93% more likely to succeed at what you're doing. So that alone is worth any advice, right? You
Yes.
don't have to be a solo journey. Find your team, find your crew.
Yes. Any books, um, business or otherwise, you would recommend to, could be anyone, but maybe could be like a teacher starting out, that you found supportive?
That's such a good question because there's so many of
I
them.
know that it's always like it's a good question. It's like the worst question, because if you want to like, I'll give you some time to pick the perfect one or not pick the perfect one. Just, whatever
Well,
comes to mind.
ironically and kind of amazingly, I put books under my computer for Zooms and
I
kind of
love it.
intentionally, I don't know if you, but this is the great work of your life. Stephen Cope.
Ha-
But have you read that book yet?
No, I haven't, but I feel like I've heard
Oh,
of that name before.
yeah. That's all about working on purpose. So I think there's a reason why I pulled that book out today before our before our interview, because that's a
Perfect.
great and that's a great read. Like before, I like to read before I'm falling asleep, but it's like it's inspirational. So if you're someone that has like some wild dreams, it kind of plants the seed for good dreams, I think.
Like real dreams and like actual like life dreams.
But yeah, actually sleeping dreams.
Yeah.
You know,
Is there
creativity flows all the time, right?
totally.
You fall asleep, open that up. You get amazing ideas there too.
Well, the great work of your life. I'm gonna check that out. Julie, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that is still kind of rustling inside that you feel called to share?
I guess I have a question for you.
Okay,
And
yeah, let's
what
do it.
you are, what are you creating outside of the book? Like if there's one thing right now that you are creating or feeling called to create, what is it?
Hmm. This mastermind is a creation as much as it's kind of more group thing, like, and it's really not me teaching, like it's very anti-course in that way. So it feels like a creation. It's kind of already created, so I'm still kind of letting it evolve. So I'm tending to it. Um, for me, it's I've been doing a lot of interviews on this podcast recently, and it kind of started out more heavily solo episodes. So I think I'm wanting to like get back to developing some solo episodes, because I really kind of like just kind of riffing and rapping and letting my mind just go, and that kind of free form in a kind of solo podcast episode. So probably like thinking about ideas for what that could be. So if you have any recommendations, open to hearing. And hmm, you know, outside of it, I think creating a partnership and a marriage and things that are coming up for me, and stuff that's showing up for me that's like shadowy and challenging. It feels like a creative act that is asking me to lean into. And that's been, yeah, it feels that's been a little different energy than typical creativity, but there is something creative, I think, in stepping into that.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's
of
really
course.
cool.
Yeah. So
I'm
Julie,
excited
where
about all of them.
thank you. What are you excited about? What do you got coming up? Where can people find you? Anything kind of what you're creating maybe now?
Yeah, well, my website, you can either go to Julie Skon or my ritual, rituelle.com brings you to the same website. Um, and of course on Insight Timer. I am feeling a new book happening, but haven't landed on it yet. Personally, actually another book, I'm listening to a book on boundaries right now, which has me really excited because thought I was someone that had really healthy boundaries. And in a lot of areas of life I do, but through listening to this, I was realizing how much more growth there is to have. And like with healthy boundaries comes more freedom, which is I used to think
Mm-hmm.
the opposite. So over the next couple weeks, I'm focusing on that. And I feel like by having healthier boundaries, more will come to fruition in terms of creativity and all the other goods. So right now, I'm kind of less is best, creating some things for Inside Timer, but I think in 2024, there'll be a new book for sure.
Amazing. Love the paradox. So powerful. Julie, this was so much fun to hang out.
Yes, thank you so much, Lou. This has been amazing.
Hope everyone enjoyed, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode soon.